Welcome back to Mark Fisher Outdoors, everybody, for another Underwater Wednesday episode. You might be able to look over my shoulder and see that we still have our man-made tree stump that we had from last week when we did that episode about getting unsnagged and showed you 4 different ways to get unsnagged. Well, before we take our stump out and get our pool cleaned up after that fiasco last week, we thought we'd use that stump one more time and we'd talk about bumping baits into cover, just to give you kind of an underwater look at what that looks like and why that's such a powerful triggering effect for getting big bass to bite. Guys, we're going to come back in the pool and we're going to use our man-made stump one more time. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to Mark Fisher Outdoors, everybody. I'm Mark Fisher, and like I said, we are going to use our stump one more time. Figured we'd get some use out of it before we pull it out of the pool and clean up all the algae out of the pool and things like that. But so what I thought was, there's a lot of baits that we use that we intentionally want to get right up into that cover. We want to bang those baits off of that cover because that's what's going to draw a strike. When the fish is in that cover, when the bait bangs up against it and deflects off of that cover, we know that draws strikes time and time again. So what we did is we threw a couple of different baits that are pretty typical, showed you what they look like just kind of zooming by, and then what happens when those baits hit that cover and deflect off of it. So let's get in the pool and check it out and kind of see what they look like. We started off with a spinnerbait. That's pretty much a standard bait that you want to bang off a cover. One that's great for getting deep into cover without getting snagged very much, and that's that spinnerbait going by that cover without even touching it. And that's the kind of thing right here where, I'm not saying you're not going to get bit, but now if you look as that spinnerbait goes by and we actually deflect off of that limb, you see how the blades stop, the bait kills, and then it gets started again. And that's the kind of thing where if that bass was sitting under that limb or next to that piece of cover and all of a sudden he saw that bait either act like it was wounded or act like it was stunned and then start to take off again, that's the thing that's going to trigger that fish to actually move from that safety of that cover and decide to go out and bite. The other one that I really liked is looking at this crankbait. And that crankbait, is just kind of zooming by there. And again, there is nothing saying you're not going to get bit. If there's a bass hanging out by that bucket and the crankbait goes by, he may dart out to get that crankbait. But when that crankbait comes along over the top and it's speeding by and then all of a sudden it darts, it kind of tilts to the side, things like that. That is just the movement that we want when we get to a situation where we want to trigger that fish into biting. When these fish are attacking a bait that's deflecting off of the cover, we are triggering them to bite. They are not thinking about it. They are acting instinctually. And that's what is the difference between getting 20 bites in a day and getting 10 bites in a day. If you can trigger those fish to bite, whether they wanted to or not, that's the deal. And you're seeing some of this in slow motion. Guys, we love bringing you this kind of content, and it's exciting for us to do. It's neat to watch it. We all know about this. I'm not giving you any information that's like really revolutionary, but to see it underwater is kind of cool to watch. And it just helps, from an angler standpoint, it helps to visualize it as you're watching this. And if you like this, guys, we'd ask you to please subscribe to Mark Fisher Outdoors, because we do Underwater Wednesday or On the Water Wednesday every Wednesday. So we'd love for you to subscribe to the channel, hit that notification button so that you know when we put our content out. Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock Central. The other bait that I thought was cool was a rattle trap type bait, a vibrating bait. And to be honest, guys, I'm always, you know, a little hesitant to throw a vibrating bait, a rattle trap type bait around wood for fear of getting snagged. And, you know, it doesn't do too bad. This is a bait that it did get snagged. I used that technique that we showed you last week and got unsnagged. But, you know, that was good. And I really, you know, when that thing's vibrating along and then all of a sudden it stops and then starts again, vibrating bait can be good when you bounce it off of stumps and things like that. I remember going down to Gunnersville and throwing a rattle trap, you know, on stumps. That's a go-to technique, and you can see it in action here in the pool. So guys, like I said, this is nothing revolutionary, but you know, it's kind of neat to be able to get you in the pool, show you some of these baits as they bump cover. It goes back to what I said before, guys. If you are not fishing in the gnarly stuff, getting in there deep and risking getting snagged, but getting in there so you're actually banging that bait against that cover, that's where you're going to get most of your bites, and you're going to make those fish bite. You're going to trigger those fish to bite, even when they're kind of in that lethargic mood and they're just tucked up tight to cover. So kind of keep this in mind the next time you're out there throwing a rattle trap or throwing a spinnerbait and you're getting up real tight to cover. I'm telling you, fall cold fronts, that is when you want to be throwing up tight to cover. So believe me, you could still use this tip this year, guys. Hope this helps. We will be back again tomorrow for another episode of Mark Fisher Outdoors. We appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Take care, everybody.
Stay channeled.